Nice.
Too fun.
Thank you for joining me in El Cajon, California. I'm Mitch Gallagher. We're at the Taylor Factory with Andy Powers, and we're checking out some amazing guitars today.
Yeah.
Great to see you.
Likewise. Yeah. Thanks for coming out for the visit.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been incredible. We've had a tour of the factory, had a chance to check out some of the amazing new guitars, and what I think we should really sit down and talk about are these Grand Pacifics that are just being announced by Taylor.
Yeah, this is a fresh thing that we're just introducing, but it's something that's been cooking here in the workshop for quite a long time. This guitar is about 5 years in the making, actually. Mm-hmm. This was an early piece that I had in mind when I first started developing the V-Class idea. I'd been listening to a lot of the songs I grew up with. You know, a lot of old bluegrass, a lot of old country western music. This kind of the story songs, you know,
right?
The songs where you go, yeah, this is familiar. I remember this stuff. It's been a long time since I listened to it, but yeah, I know those. Okay.
Right.
And I started thinking, man, I really like that familiar thing that acoustic guitars do, or at least what I'd hear them on records. But I've been building guitars long enough to know that a lot of times those guitars in person, they're not really going to make the sounds that you associate with them. They don't really sound like the records you know.
Right. Once they've been through the studio, they've been mic'd up, they've been EQ'd and compressed.
Exactly. You put a mic in front of it, you compress it, you EQ it, you run it through this and that, and kind of smooth out the lumps and bumps.
Right.
And so I wanted to build a sound that was familiar, but with the modern practicalities that we need out of a guitar. Mm-hmm. And so I had this idea about this V-Class idea, the internal architecture, where we could generate better sustain and better volume. Does this neat intonation thing, good projection, and all these musically useful sounds, right?
Right.
And so the first guitar I tried that in was actually a pretty traditional dreadnought shape. Okay, that's a good place as any to start. Second guitar, built that second one, went, wow, this isn't a fluke, this is really something.
Right.
Third guitar, I built this shape. Totally different thing for Taylor. I went, man, I need a cooler shape, because I really got something cooking here. This is interesting.
Right.
Frightening, but good, you know. Not really sure what kind of Pandora's box I've opened here.
Right.
But I started building this guitar. I thought, well, this is a totally different direction. This is a whole different thing. Because the guitars that we get known for as Taylor are very modern, but there's a signature to it, mm-hmm. right? I mean, using words to describe sounds is insufficient at best, but if I tried, the Taylor sound is modern, it's articulate, it's vibrant, it's precise, mm-hmm. and it has all these great qualities that a musician can use in a modern context. You know, if you're in a studio or recording with other musicians, there's nothing better. It works great.
Right.
But at the same time, as a guitar player, I also like other personalities and other flavors. So I wanted to build a guitar that did some of these other things that I'm familiar with. I wanted a warm, kind of mature sounding guitar, but at the same time, I want volume, mm-hmm. I want it to play really in tune, I want sustain, I want projection, I want all the things that make it usable for a modern musician.
Sure.
So that's what's really going into this guitar, is it's a different direction, sound-wise, because we don't always want a real modern, vibrant-sounding guitar.
Sure.
Sometimes we want the sound of maturity.
Right. And this kind of bridges that whole gap between modern, vintage, and dreadnought, and smaller body styles. And I was at the Nashville event this summer when you showed this to some of the press and some of us early. And one thing that really struck me was just the purity of the tone. You really feel like you can hear the instrument when you're playing it, and whether you're playing fingerstyle or pick style. Yeah. It seems to really bridge that as well.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like in the guitar world, we tend to get a little too focused on specs, and we tend to turn into spice traders looking for exotic woods, and we geek out over the details and the subtle changes of this and that.
Right.
And sometimes we can lose sight of the fact that guitars are instruments meant for playing songs. Mm-hmm. It sounds almost silly to state the obvious, but that's what this thing's for.
Right.
It's a musical instrument for playing songs. Mm-hmm. And so as a builder, what my goal is, what I hope to achieve, is to build an instrument that I can put in the hands of a musician and say, go play this guitar. I don't care what you play on it, just play it. Tell your stories. Approach it the way you approach a guitar.
Right.
I want you to use a pick, I want you to use fingers, I want you to strum open position chords. You're gonna find all the same great things that we saw in the V-class guitars initially. This incredible intonation, you're gonna see super accurate notes, you're gonna hear long sustain, really good balance over the whole register.
Right.
But it has this appealing, familiar voice that's really great for telling stories.
I really like the word balance applied to these instruments because that's what I really hear with this. I mean, I do a lot of recording, and with certain guitars you get a lot of thump on the bottom end, and on others there's a lot of top end, almost noise and almost a brash kind of character to it, or certain frequencies will just pop out, like a resonance or whatever.
Yeah.
And I don't hear this with, I've played now 4 or 5 of these, and they're all just so nice and even.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. That's something I wanted to build into this guitar. A lot of times with larger body guitars, you get this kind of this big whoosh of air around on the low end,
right,
where it swallows the rest of the guitar's voice. It's the exact same physical effect as when you're, like if you're singing. We all know a singer in front of a microphone with a windscreen or a pop filter and then the microphone behind it.
Right.
Guitars actually do that exact same thing. So if you're not careful, a larger body guitar will put this puff of air somewhere on the low end.
Right.
And it's frustrating because you can't tune it, you can't mic it, you can't record it. It destroys the rest of the guitar's voice. You can't really play with others very easily.
Right.
So it just doesn't work, you know? It doesn't
the first thing
work
an engineer's
good.
going to put a high-pass filter on that.
Absolutely.
And cut that off,
You
right?
trim off all that junk underneath because you can't use it. So in this case, I didn't want to kind of use all my string energy to build that thing. I wanted clear power. I want it to be warm. I mean, that's something I was looking for out of this guitar.
Sure.
But I want it to be uniform and balanced throughout its sustain, throughout the whole register, throughout the sonic response.
Right.
You know, all the sonority of each note needs to have a similar enough character that you don't have to alter your technique to use all the notes.
Right, right. It's interesting that all that bottom end isn't what really makes the guitar sound big either, because it's down so low that when you get up very high, it's just a thump really, really down there. It's not really a part of the spectrum of the actual guitar.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because sometimes people will describe it as a low end that you feel and don't hear, and that can be kind of a problem. Because what I'm after is things that I can hear out of this.
Right.
You know, I mean, the two things that I like out of a guitar is I want it to feel good and I want it to sound good.
Right, right.
But when I feel it, I want that to be like a physical thing. So these guitars have this kind of rounded off edge treatment, different neck shape, rolled in fingerboard, like just everything that you could really touch has been eased off to make it comfortable to hold and play.
Right.
I want that part of the guitar's feel to be completely at home and completely familiar. But sonically, I want to hear what I'm playing, and I don't want to waste any of that.
Right. And I certainly don't want to give the impression that this isn't a big sounding guitar, because the bottom end is still, there's a lot of bottom end with this instrument.
Yeah.
It's still nice and full sounding
It's a
all the way
huge
down
sounding
the register.
guitar, but the entire voice is big.
Right. Right, absolutely. And I like what you're saying too. I mean, I think that's so true. It feels like a guitar that's been played for 50 years. You know, the edges are all rounded off and the neck feels very comfortable. It feels very played in, almost right out of the case.
Yeah, the neck shape is pretty interesting to me because that in particular is a departure from what we've done in the past. Typically, a guitar neck is shaped so that it has a consistent profile all the way up. That works really well for a lot of players. We've done things that way for a long time. And we'll continue to do that. For this guitar, I was considering the way that a player's hand would move as it went up the neck. I thought, well, we tend to wrap our thumb in the lower positions.
Right.
That's kind of how we hold it. And so something that's a slight V shape feels really good down here.
Right.
But by the time I come up higher on the guitar's fingerboard, I can't wrap my thumb anymore. That's not the natural hand position. My thumb is in the back of the neck. So up here, I want it to be a little more round.
Right.
That makes it more comfortable to hold correctly. So this neck actually transitions from one profile to another. It's a subtle shift so that you really can't easily identify it.
Right.
I mean, it's pretty subtle.
Until you pointed it out, I would not have, now I feel it, of course, going from, and it's not a real dramatic V at the bottom. It's just a nice,
not at
comfortable,
all.
It fits the curve of your hand where your thumb meets the palm.
It's
yeah,
just
it's
enough
very natural.
that this neck feels comfortable. It feels familiar. So that with this rolled in fingerboard edge, yeah, it takes like no getting used to.
Right, right. So there are 3 models in the Grand Pacific line,
Yes.
the 300, the 500, and the 700, correct?
Yep.
Tell us about the 3 models and what differentiates them.
Okay, so starting with the 7, that's the guitar that you have there. That's a Builder's Edition 717. That one is East Indian rosewood on the back and sides. It's got a roast Sitka spruce top.
Right.
Fairly conventional guitar woods, fairly traditional. But man, the sound that it makes is just amazing. Has this, what we call a compound carved neck. Has this rolled in fingerboard edge, chamfered off body edges. Even the bridge is changed. So it has this real eased in, comfortable, tactile quality. That guitar has a wild honey burst top finish, and the whole guitar is finished in what we call silent satin. So it cuts down the extra noise when it's rubbing against your shirt sleeve or your arm and whatnot.
Right, yeah.
This model that I've got is a 500 series version of a Builder's Edition. So this one is Sitka with mahogany on the back and sides. The appointments between the 2 guitars are almost identical. Little different material for the same fingerboard inlay pattern, but again, we're making it with the wild honey sunburst finish or natural top version, silent satin, this interesting neck. The guitars are almost identical other than the 2 different voices brought on by those 2 different woods.
Right.
As well, we have a 317E model, which is more of a standard Taylor appointed guitar. So you'd see sapele on the back and sides with Sitka spruce top, a classic Taylor neck, classic Taylor appointments, but with this kind of voicing in it.
Right, right. I was surprised, again in Nashville, we were in a very nice studio there listening to the guitars and how much difference going from mahogany to the rosewood makes, and they both sound phenomenal. I'd always thought of myself as I'm a rosewood kind of guy, but then when you hear the mahogany, it's like there is a different lower mid-range, a different character to that. Tell us a little bit about those woods in these guitars and how they're functioning and what they do for the player.
Okay, so the rosewood, to me, it's got a bit stronger harmonic content. Rosewood's characteristic is that, we'll call it sound, but really energy, vibration, form energy. It'll move through that material very rapidly with almost no dampening. So all the harmonic content of the string you hear.
Right.
So it makes a kind of a wet, almost reverby quality. It's like a real thick, rich, saturated kind of sound. So it makes a beautiful lyrical response. The mahogany version, it's tuned a little different to emphasize mahogany's character. This one has a dry, what I call a fundamental strong sound. So when you play a note, that's the note you get. It's like a very pure, round version of that sound. So if you're a singer-songwriter or you're strumming chords or you're playing a lot of real fast passages like the classic fiddle tunes,
Right.
that dry mahogany sound tends to come across as really clean. It's a warm sound, but it's a very dry, fundamental, strong sound.
Right, right. So the other aspect of an acoustic guitar like this is the body shape. And this is a new shape for Taylor, not something you've worked with before, and it's reminiscent of some of the kind of classic slope-shouldered guitars we've seen in the past.
It is. The shape of an acoustic guitar does largely determine what it sounds like.
Sure.
You can think of it as what the sound is shaped like. If I threw a tape measure across it, it loosely falls into the same ballpark as like a classic dreadnought, whether it was a round shoulder or a square shoulder dreadnought. These curves are a little different than any of those, to the degree that I kind of wrestle with calling it a dreadnought. It sort of is, so that's a familiar reference point. Now the waist is ever so slightly tighter than some of those guitars, but not by much. But this rounded upper bout and lower bout does help shape the kind of voicing that I wanted to get out of this guitar.
Right, right. And that's important because, just as we were talking here, acoustically, it's obviously very important. You've got electronics in these guitars, but it's all part of the voice of that instrument.
Yeah, the guitar has to stand alone as an acoustic guitar. So in this case, this particular one is fitted with an ES2 pickup. That one isn't. Now, as a guitar player and a listener, I've seen a lot of musicians, and they'll play, and our ES2 pickup works great for most players in most environments. But it's not the perfect thing for every player in every environment. And frankly, a lot of players, if they're not playing amplified, I'd rather have the guitar with no pickup in it. You know, this is kind of the best pickup that I've used, having tried kind of everything.
Sure.
And it works really well. But if I was just playing in front of a microphone, I just assume leave the pickup out.
Right.
You know, so that's something that I wanted out of these guitars. And if I was crowding around a microphone, like playing in a bluegrass band, it's totally appropriate to be playing that guitar with no pickup in it.
Right, right. So are there separate models available, or are there different levels available with and without pickups?
Exactly. All of these models, the Builder's Edition 717, as well as the Builder's Edition 517, those are available with and without the ES2 pickup in it.
Right, right. Very cool. So you can choose.
Yeah. I think the player should choose.
Right, right, absolutely. So one of the things that really strikes me about these instruments is how versatile they are. Your pick player, your fingerstyle player, you can use them in so many different situations. And of course, Taylor's guitars in general are very versatile instruments. But how does something like this sit in family-wise, along with like a grand auditorium?
Okay, so the grand auditorium guitars, that's Taylor's quintessential modern acoustic guitar, right? It is vibrant, it's articulate, it's precise, it's balanced. It does all the things that our guitars are known for.
Right.
Really, Taylor has a characteristic sound, and that is what that's like the poster child, right?
Right.
So it makes it a very versatile modern guitar. This is also a very versatile guitar, and it has a lot of those similar qualities. But the personality is totally different. Like if you were to imagine the shape of the notes that came off a grand auditorium guitar, pretend that they were like geometric shapes.
Right.
They'd be almost like a triangle.
Okay.
They'd come to like a point. They're very precise. They're accurately located. They're vibrant and bright. The notes that would come off of this guitar are more like a bell curve, where a grand auditorium guitar, all the notes separate from each other, so you can hear this piano-like kind of voicing. Every note in a chord is really clear and well-defined. These guitars, the notes are designed to blend. So you play a chord and you hear the harmony, you don't hear really a collection of notes.
Right.
So it's a totally different approach to a sound. They're both balanced, long sustaining, good volume, good projection, good intonation, but the personalities are very different.
Right. But it still works whether you're playing with a pick.
Yeah.
And like you said, when you do have, you can really, with the V-class bracing and a complex chord like that, where the notes are all still there, but you do perceive them as like a single entity, if you will. They kind of...
Yeah, they blend a little more.
Right, very interesting, very interesting.
So both of those guitars are like great general purpose acoustic instruments, but one has a very, very high fidelity modern response, and one has a very mature kind of response.
Right.
It's a different personality.
That's a great way to put it. That's a great way to put it. Andy, I'm so excited about the Grand Pacific. I think this is a big step in a different direction, but at the same time still has all those classic Taylor appointments and the things you expect, the playability and the versatility and just the overall quality of the instrument. But the beautiful things you've done with making it feel like a played-in guitar, and the neck shape, and of course the V-class bracing, which I love so much for what it does for the tone as well. It's really, really exciting.
Thank you. We're excited about it as well.
Absolutely. I think you're going to want to check these out. They really sound phenomenal, no matter what style of music you're playing, no matter what style of guitarist you are, pick style, finger style. This is an instrument that you definitely want to get into your hands and give a good listen and a good play to. Great to see you. Always
Likewise.
a pleasure. Congratulations on this.
Thank you.
And thanks for hosting us here at Taylor's facility in El Cajon.
Anytime. Our doors are always open.
Right on. Thank you. And thank you for joining me. I'm Mitch Gallagher from Sweetwater.